Tanks and healers have an interesting relationship. I often feel like it's me and the tank's job to help lead the DPS to the end of the dungeon and make sure everybody's safe, but sometimes when you're pugging, it can feel like they're an extra fix. Now don't get me wrong, I like playing with every single tank, and you'll hear that in this tier list. I love the tanks, but when it comes to pugging, I got my biases. And so this tier list is sort of those biases as a tier list. One of my favorite tanks to play with when I'm going full pug. Now, in addition to that, at the end of the video, I'm also going to kind of broadcast sort of my feelings going into season 4 as to how I feel the meta for tanks are going to shape up. But this is just so that people can see the healer side of this. And please don't take my words at full value, right? Like when it comes to tanks, you're just getting my perspective as the person trying to keep them and the rest of the party alive. But I think it'd be fun. So, hey, if you like healing content, my name is BowserTheHealer, and yes, I do play some tank and some DPS, but for the most part, I'm a big healer player, maybe play a little too much of this game. So if you like healing content, get subscribed. It means a lot to me. Or if you just like listening to me talk about World of Warcraft, hey, I appreciate you. So my normal tier lists are like a A rank, B rank, C rank, that sort of thing, with S rank being like perfect and above all else, and F rank being absolutely unviable. This tier list isn't going to quite be like that. The tier list at the end of the video might be, but this one is a bit more. I had to make custom categories because if a tank is good, then they're good. Every single tank in this game, played by a competent player, can be played into an extremely high level with very little issue or with only a little bit of help from the healer. Honestly, you don't have to build around a tank until higher keys. So all the way into the 20s, 22s, and even all the way into 24s, every single tank can get away with playing just fine, and I don't find them difficult to heal at all. So this is sort of considering the variance in healers I can get, which means that things like population of certain players does actually affect these tiers to a decent degree. All right, in our first category, my top tier, my favorite pug tanks is the name of the category. We have Brewmaster and Blood DK for pugging. Now, again, this is pugging only, and let me explain why Brewmaster is in my #1 spot. Yes, they receive boosted healing. Yes, they have the good crowd control and the sustainability that you expect from a tank. They're very easy to keep up, but if you know how they play and you track their cooldowns, they are very easy to track when they're going to need help. And furthermore, like Vengeance Demon Hunter and also Prot Warrior, it's very visual when they need to run away because they will start rolling backwards or teleport out of a pull, which is a good sign. Oh, hey, I think my tank is trying to kite now, which means it's time for you to probably start helping them out. The player population for Brewmaster is the lowest right now, which means it's a more dedicated player base, which tends to mean that they're better in terms of skill. I just seem to have the preference towards, but if you're really bad at Brewmaster, you kind of just die. Like, you're carryable and you're easier to carry than other tanks, but you don't make it very far. So you're going to know very quickly if you don't think your Brewmaster is very good at the start of a key. This is even more prevalent when it comes to Blood DK, but Brewmaster players being few and far between, I rarely in a season find one that I struggle with, and all of the good ones I play with, especially my homie 40 Bass, who's one of my favorite Brewmasters to play with, it's always a smooth run. And the pugs that I find, they're great. When they're bad though, they pop and it's over and we get out. And I think that's the best thing you can ask for as a pug player, is that your time isn't wasted and you know very quickly if the run's gonna go south, and it's not one of those things where it runs south way later. And yes, in my second place in this category, Blood DK. Blood DKs are a lot of fun to play with. If played perfectly or even near perfectly, they live forever, they manage their own health bars, they have tons of control, and they can easily deal with a multitude of mobs and pull things that most tanks just can't. Blood DK brings also some massive slows as well, which can help with kiting or dealing with mobs that like to chase people down. That death and decay slow is absolutely massive. But again, if they're bad, they kind of don't exist, they just die. And Blood DKs are also on the rarer side, so again, when you find the dedicated BDK players, they're usually pretty phenomenal. And shoutouts to my friend Becca, who really showed me what the spec can do back in the EVE Ascension tournament last season. I love what Blood DK brings to the table, and I usually have clean runs with them. There is some bias here though, I want to be completely forward. I play Preservation Evoker, and while they're good at healing tanks because of Golden Hour, the talent, they're extremely good at healing Brewmasters and Blood DKs. So there's some clear bias here I want to be completely forward about, but I still like playing with them on all the other healers as well. Trust, I know I have bias, but I really do like these tanks. In my second category, the good but tough when bad category, Both these tanks can totally be carried by a healer, but it's tough. It's going to cost a lot of resources and ultimately not very fun. And this one goes to Prot Warrior and Prot Paladin. This one's completely unordered though, and just so we're clear, my real meta tier list going into next season's at the end of the video. Paladin's a better tank than Warrior. Just little spoilers, like they have more right now than Warrior, and I kind of want Warrior to get some buffs, but when it comes to pugging, I'm sort of on this the same amount. I would pick either one, because it's not really how good Paladin is why I'm going to grab it. It's just that the tanks might fall over. Let me explain. So Prot Paladin brings tons of control, a battle res, off healing, an invulnerability that taunts enemies nearby. There's a lot of good external defensives and tricks that Paladin has up their sleeves. They're kind of amazing for it. And if Vengeance Demon Hunter wasn't that good, I think Prot Paladin would be our meta. But with all the good defensives and buttons that they bring to the table, they have two different parts to their active mitigation: Consecration and Shield of the Righteous. Consecration's a part of their mastery, and that by standing in Consecration, they receive less damage. This is good for magic and for physical. Shield of the Righteous is going to help them build a buff that gives them stacking strength and stamina, which will help overall defensively, but realistically, it's the extra armor granted by Shield of the Righteous that is so useful. If you have both of these running, Paladins are unbelievably hard to take down. And let's say they are getting taken down, Ardent Defender has a cheat death baked in. So when they hit this Ironbark style defensive, right, short cooldown, just a flat DR, they will in fact cheat death if they die. There's a lot going on here that works really well, but I always see pugs misplan this. You can use these tools to really keep yourself alive, but whether they walk out of the Consecration due to Sanguine or Entangling, or they have to go grab more mobs or whatever it is, they don't tend to replant their Consecration, or they don't continue generating Holy Power, and thus they don't hit Shield of the Righteous, so they start losing armor. Then they start falling off. Granted, they have a bunch of defensives that can help them bridge those gaps and stay alive. So there are many ways for them to live through this, but a lot of players don't realize this. And I will be in keys as high as a 24 with a Prot Paladin that just falls over dead because they didn't plan their defensives correctly. And there's nothing you can do as a healer to catch that. They will die faster than you blink if you're not looking out for it. Now, if they are catching themselves correctly, they're pretty easy to catch. And let me tell you, Bubble as a catching tool, yeah, you can just heal them to full while they're in Bubble. Like it's pretty chill. But all of these issues exist on Prot Warrior. Prot Warrior has decent control, great damage, and a very good survivability. They can do some insane pulls, kind of like Blood DK, because of shield block. They're so good at blocking physical attacks and resisting physical, you can kind of take them anywhere and do whatever you want, and a Prot Warrior can probably live it. It's bleeds and magical dots that really do them in, but they even have tools to mitigate that. Good self-healing, although infrequent self-healing, they do need a little bit of help from the healer when they start to fall. The great news is because of things like defensive stance giving them a standing 20% damage reduction all the time, they're actually quite easy to catch. You're going to notice a warrior dying, and it won't be sudden, and if it is sudden they lose like a chunk of their health bar, they can hold on for quite a while. But of course, it comes back to active mitigation. I don't know what it is about players not pressing shield block, but it is literally more damage to press shield block. I know we all meme like, oh, Bowser, defensives aren't damage, that's a DPS. No, you get damage from having shield block up. I promise you, it is better to have shield block running more often than it is to not have it running. And I will get players that hit 19% shield block uptime in a 22-way Chris manner. I think it was a 22, I don't know, it's on my Twitch VODs, and I'll be pulling out my hair because they could have just been living and doing more damage the entire dungeon if they wanted to. And I want Prot Warrior to get some buffs so that's more in line with some of the meta healers, but realistically, they're not hard to play with as a healer. I actually love playing with them. And it's my friend Jacob as Guardian, who you've seen in my original videos I started posting, who got me on the spec in the first place. I love this spec. But a bad one feels like dead weight. It's so heavy, and the worst part, you can probably keep them alive. And it's awful on your mana bar, it's awful on the party, and I won't blame you if you let a Prot Paladin or Prot Warrior fall in their face because you are so sick of them not being able to play their spec. It can get very annoying, but I really do love playing with these specs, and again, every single spec, it's a good time when they're good at the game, so we keep these ones in the mid tier. And for my final tier, do note that both the tanks in here, especially next season, are quite strong. One of them is S rank, but I think the tier title does the justice alone. You absolutely could be doing better tier. And this one's ordered, starting off with Guardian Druid. I want to give a quick shout out to Ari, Silas, and Felix for being amazing bear players, as well as the bear I played with on stream today. They all made me love this spec because bear has the crowd control, the regen, the boosted healing from healers or whoever. They got it all. They're so much fun to play with, and they also heal a lot themselves, being able to stack up heals and give them out to players, or things like After the Wildfire that just help so much fill in the gaps of your own healing. Get a bear. Bears are pug stars. If you're an amazing bear, you're going to be every pug's best friend. The problem is that most pug bears I play with don't press Iron Fur. Yes, we're back to active mitigation, but this one maddens me because it isn't just Iron Fur, it's only Iron Fur. And it's been happening since season 2. I swear, partway into my season 2 journey, the bears went from one of my favorite tanks to play with. There's even a video from season 1 of me talking about how much I enjoy playing with bears in my original tanking video. Partway into season 2, something happened. Maybe it was the rework, maybe it was the guide, maybe it was a guide. I actually don't know, and I don't want to flame anyone. But at one point or another, people stopped pressing Iron Fur, falling over in the middle of dungeons, and I could never figure out why. And then I would be the player that goes, hey, your Iron Fur is way too low. You got to press that more. And you're in some 23 halls of infusion. Someone's yelling at you, I'm pressing it enough. You don't know what you're talking about. And then all of a sudden they don't die. Their Iron Fur time's up. You know, they're blasting. They're still doing great damage. And I no longer am sweating trying to keep them alive. And it happened so often. I thought it would end in season 3 and it absolutely hasn't. And if we're going into season 4 with bear having an even better tier set, I need this one off my chest. Learn how to use those defensives. Remember, Iron Fur is going to give you more armor, which means auto attacks do less. So when you create a big shield, your big shield can now be used against magic and less so against physical because you're resisting more of the physical element. Does that make sense? I see the potential of bear in just how good it is, and then I see pugs and just how terrible they can be sometimes, and it just makes me so frustrated. Bear does so many good things. I wish more people played it. So here's my ask. Get really good at bear and change the game for me, tank players. I want to see more bears out there. And here's the one that I know I'm going to get some flack for. In my bottom tier slot, Vengeance Demon Hunter. Vengeance Demon Hunter is S tier before any of you come after me. It's amazing. The skill cap is really high and the skill expression is really high. A wide range of builds. Honestly, we kind of just need to nerf maybe a bit of its survivability, but maybe the crowd control to a little bit. Maybe it doesn't need to be as strong. But I actually kind of like the state of Vengeance Demon Hunter and maybe want more tanks to be closer to it. So how is this thing bottom tier? Well, it's sort of a quality of player problem, and this isn't just because it's a flavor of the month ordeal. When I started in Shadowlands, I was blessed with my friend Sarath, who's a fantastic Demon Hunter player. And by the time I was pugging at the end of season 2 of Shadowlands, I started playing with Demon Hunters that were pugs. And oh boy, they were really bad. And then it kept being bad. As I went through Dragonflight, I met this tank named Vidar. Amazing Demon Hunter, great friend. Everyone else just couldn't keep up with him. Every once in a while, you get this gem of a Demon Hunter that plays near perfectly. And I've been getting a few more of them as of late, thankfully. But it is so unbelievably hard to keep a Demon Hunter up that doesn't know how to juggle the defensives. I think the problem comes in that there's a lot of moving parts. You have demon spikes and their calcified spikes. You have frailty, setting things on fire, your metamorphosis, your fell devastation. There's a lot of different parts. Oh yeah, soul shards. There's a lot of parts. I even forgot one. This is like my 5th take, I swear. Having that many moving parts that you need to overlap carefully means that some builds will require you to play damn near perfectly, and then there are other ones that are a bit more relaxed. But not everyone wants to play the ultra defensive build. They want to play something that also does good damage, and I get it. I like that all these builds are here, but I think many players err on the side of damage and then don't survive when we need them to. A lot of times they'll be like, healer, what are you doing? And I'll be like, excuse me? You died in 1.1 seconds. What do you want from me? I'll never forget. Brackenhide Hollow. This Vengeance Demon Hunter goes in, it's like a 22 or something, jumps in, pulls, dies. Says, hold on, let me try that again. We go back in, jumps in, we pop Lust, dies a few GCDs in, instantly leaves the key. That's my Vengeance Demon Hunter experience in a nutshell. If they're not amazing, they just destroy a key. And I don't get many amazing ones. And I get some ones that get me really nervous that start falling over, and make mistakes. Now, granted, I've now had the opportunity to play with more that play better and can correct their mistakes, but maybe that's the flavor of the month, that there's just so many of them. I'm starting to see a wider range of them. I'm only one player. This is clearly just my perspective on this. I'm only one number on this stat, but they are so frustrating to play with, and there's so many of them. I often find that the key fails because of the Vengeance Demon Hunter. It's not usually a DPS fault when I have a Vengeance in the key, and I find that kind of suspicious. Granted, it's maybe like a 60-40 split, but the good ones, I'm telling you, to all of you who play Vengeance and you're wonderful at it, thank you. You make my life a lot easier, and I love playing with you. Which leaves us to our final season of Dragonflight, Season 4. Every tank's going to have their preferred set, and it leaves me wanting a few buffs and a few overall changes, but here's how I think it's going to go. Vengeance is still going to be S tier for its unbelievable control. Bear will be right behind it with excellent survivability and great damage. I think Paladin could beat out Bear if, say, Bear isn't as good as it was in Season 2, right? I feel like Paladin might be a close second. They have great control and great externals, which sometimes for a great push is the kind of thing that you need, so who knows? Blood DK is going to remain, I think, a solid 4th place, and that it will always remain strong as long as there's good blood DKs in the game and playing the game. They'll be dominating. So if you find a good blood, be friends with them, because you're gonna love having them in your keys. And then I brew and prot at the bottom. Not that they're bad. I think the bottom of my tier list is a B+, with Guardian and Paladin in A or A+ tier, with Vengeance being in its own S tier category. I think brew and prot just need a little bit of love. Some of the button bloat of Brewmaster probably needs to be reduced, and I think they need a bit more survivability, but honestly, it all comes down to crowd control. Let them have just a bit more control in their game plan. And same with Prot Warrior. I think it was Banshee IRL who said on Twitter that they think Disrupting Shout, the AoE taunt, which can also AoE kick, if that was a 45-second cooldown, that'd be amazing for Prot Warriors. And I agree. I think if we can bring up this bottom end a little bit and kind of cut Vengeance Demon Hunter back just a bit, we're going to be in a great spot, because once upon a time in Shadowlands, not all the tanks felt even. Some of them were much harder to heal than others, especially depending on what covenant they were in. I'm so happy to be a healer playing with tanks in an era where the worst tank in the game, which I think is Prot Warrior, which is my favorite tank in the game right now, is completely viable, totally fun, and I love playing with them. Good ones make my day so much easier. So keep that in mind. If you're trying to find a tank for next tier, pick the one that you like the most. If you go to push world record level content, you might want to start considering maybe something a little more meta, but I don't think you're going to have to worry about that. And if your plan's only to do up to 20s and maybe a little bit more and stop it there, please play any tank you want right now. They're all great. Just make sure you do the research you should be doing so that you don't have me in your key telling you to maybe press shield block once or twice. That's going to do it for me. This one, I absolutely want to hear tank comments. How do y'all feel about my takes? Remember, I'm a healer main. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Let me know down below, all of you DPS healers, and I will see you all in the next one.